My name's Pete Woods, you're watching Hexham TV. Who are you?
I'm Tim Pearson. I am a veterinary surgeon and I'm the director of Orchard House Veterinary Centre in Hexham. So we have three branches, one here in Hexham, one in Stocksfield and one in Bellingham, and we're celebrating 25 years of being open.
So 25 years. What's changed over 25 years, Tim?
Oh, nothing at all. I look exactly the same. But an awful lot has changed. So the whole veterinary industry has changed. So there are far more corporate-owned practices, certainly in the cities now, and even in places like Hexham. A lot more of the practices are owned by a big group that is national. And then vets are different than they used to be in those days. I think that in many ways they're better trained than they used to be. They're more able with special skills to be able to do more. They perhaps have got training in how to do ultrasound or specialist skills in surgery. So it's a developing profession. So I always think we're around about 10 years behind the medics. So it develops in the same way as medicine does.
And so what's different about the sort of problems that people bring to you over the 25 years?
The problems themselves are pretty similar. So we have all the same health problems in terms of obesity that we see in people. That's a big problem in pets. But you get all the diseases that you see in people, really, that you see in animals as well. One of the nice things, though, is that we are actually able to do more with them now than we were 25 years ago. We have far better testing equipment that we can use in-house, so we can get a faster diagnosis. So we have laboratory machines that tell us all about the blood, all about the urine, so we can look at samples much more rapidly and get a diagnosis quickly for people. 25 years ago we didn't have an ultrasound machine. Now we have one in the practice itself that is extremely good, but we also have a qualified ultrasonographer who comes in once a week to do specialist ultrasound for us and look at the heart in great detail and check for tumours and things. A colleague of mine within the practice does laparoscopic surgery, which is keyhole surgery. That was unheard of in pets 25 years ago. So it's all quite exciting, and every now and again it makes me feel a little of a dinosaur, but I have to live with that.
What made you become a vet in the first place, Tim?
Traditionally, most people who want to become a vet, there is some moment in their lives, and I think mine was probably when I was 8 years old. My parents had taken us for a farm stay down in Somerset, and it was a dairy farm called Honeyhurst Farm, which was a really sweet place, and they had about 50 dairy cows, Friesians, and rather than my brothers would have a lie-in or whatever else, I was getting up at 4 in the morning to go and milk the cows with the farmer. I thought I was being really helpful. I was probably totally in the way. And I'd come back in for my breakfast at 6:30 in the morning, having helped to milk the cows. I just loved it. And it gave me a love of animals. And I grew up basically on a small holding. My dad had an office job, but we acquired goats and pigs and chickens and ducks and geese, and so I was involved as the oldest son, having to look after all these beasts, and I really got into it. So that was the sort of thing that lit the light bulb, that meant that's what I wanted to do with my life. So.
And there are various sorts of vets you could have become, but you decided to base yourself in Hexham or in the Tyne Valley.
Yep.
And looking after people's animals, small animals. Why did you decide to do that?
It must have been about a year and a half before we opened in Hexham that I had been in various practices. I'd done some large animal work. I've worked in Corbridge and I worked in Newcastle temporarily as a locum veterinary surgeon. And I was working down in London, and we were in a good, lovely little small animal practice that was small, friendly, really happy team. And I'd been in referral hospitals that, whilst they had all the toys and had very high standards, they were a bit soulless and a bit less friendly. And I wanted to try and do something where it was the balance. I didn't really want to live in London anymore. I wanted to live somewhere rural. And we started looking around at practices that were for sale, and nothing really fit the bill. And we were still coming up to see family up in the northeast, and one day we were in Hexham, and a friend of ours said, "Oh, there's only one vet in Hexham, and if you were to set up here, then you could do very well." So at that point, I thought, well, that doesn't sound like a bad idea. I liked the town, I liked the area, I knew the area, we had family. So it was all those reasons that were. It wasn't a very technical decision. It wasn't something where I worked on it hard, but it felt very natural, and I've never regretted it since. Still love the area, still love having brought a family up here, and feel much this is home. So.
What's the most unusual animal that you've ever had to deal with?
We were talking about this the other day. Most unusual animal that I ever saw. It was the winter of, I think, 2010, and it was a really hard winter, and the practice was practically closed because we couldn't get staff in, and there was thick snow on the ground. And about halfway through a morning surgery, one of the reception staff took a phone call and basically came through to me say, "We have somebody who's just phoned to say they've got an albino wallaby that has a limp." And I thought, oh, what an obvious wind-up. You're talking about a white animal in heavy snow, in an Australian animal that you wouldn't really expect. And I said, "Oh yeah, tell them to bring it in straight away. That's fine." And sure enough, half an hour later, upturned an albino wallaby with a sore foot. So that taught me a lesson in terms of you haven't seen anything until you've seen everything. But that was probably my most unusual pet.
Now we've come through COVID, thankfully. It's still going on, but not as bad as it was when we were all hunkered down. Pets became very, very important to people, didn't they?
Yeah. And
really helped them sort of come through that couple of years where, perhaps people were by themselves and things. How did it seem to you? How did you manage to operate during that period?
The COVID times were really hard, but very, very quickly we adjusted to it. So what we had was that a small number of the staff who felt vulnerable or had underlying health problems, they basically went on furlough, but most of the team stayed working. And we were told by the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons that we were only allowed to see urgent and emergency cases. So, we basically had a big pile of people that were waiting for vaccinations for a few months for their pets. We were basically in a situation where we were going out to the car park and taking a history, taking the animal in, examining the animal with a nurse, and then basically taking them back out again, and after they'd had some treatment. And we were doing that from March 2020 until I think it was May last year, when we finally stopped doing that once there'd been a period of COVID vaccination and everybody felt a little bit more secure. It was challenging, but because the staff were very willing to do whatever they could, we managed to see our way through it. Hopefully we don't have another pandemic for a few years. So.
Definitely. Now, you've been a vet in the Tyne Valley for 25 years. If you hadn't become a vet, what would you have done?
I have absolutely no idea. I think my wife would say that I'm a frustrated architect. I do like my projects, so since we've been a practice, then we obviously started a practice up in Bellingham and converted a building up there. At the moment we're refurbishing and extending the surgery at Stocksfield in the same fashion, trying to make it better for clients but better for the pets and for the vets working on the pets. And I really enjoy that process of having an input to design the building and make it work better for how the practice has to work. But it does stop me doing anything with a house at home. My wife would be quite frustrated by the fact that all the architecture and all the work gets done on the business. But that's the way it is. Probably an architect.
Well, Tim, congratulations on 25 years of being a vet in the Tyne Valley.
Thank you, Peter.
And thank you very much for talking to Hexham TV.
It's been a pleasure, and hopefully we'll do it again soon.